The Mayberry Virtual Investor Forum, Investing in Jamaica.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our virtual investor forum. I'm your host, Dan Theok, Senior Vice President of Investment Banking, and today we'll be having a double episode special for you where we'll be discussing the Supreme Ventures Group Limited's Q3 results as well as the Mayberry Group Limited's results. Joining us on the panel is none other than Executive Chairman of Supreme Ventures Limited Group, Gary Parrott. Welcome, Gary.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
And also Executive Chairman of Mayberry Group Limited, Christopher Berry, is with me in studios. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, Dan.
Thanks,
Hi,
folks.
everybody.
Thanks, folks. Apologies for our late start. We had some technical difficulties. Well, you already know, if you're a fan of the content, that you need to subscribe to stay up to date with our uploads. Be sure to hit the bell to receive all our future notifications because we publish videos like this just about once a week. And don't forget to stick around for the Q&A segment at the end of the program. You can go ahead and submit your questions and we will address them during our live chat later on in the segment. Additionally, if you're looking to embark on your very first investment journey, you should take that first step with Mayberry Investments Limited, of course. Follow us on our social media pages to get started today. Okay, great. So up front, we want to start off with Supreme Ventures, as we said before, and look at the financial results for the 9 months ended September 2024, also the actual results for the quarter as well. So first thing I want to speak to is the fact that total revenues were, relatively flat at $38 billion. We'll get into the dynamics of it on the next slide, but revenues year to date, relatively flat for the 9-month period compared to the same period last year. Direct expenses were also relatively flat, and as a result, the gross profit for this period was $8.8 billion, pretty much comparable to the same period last time. Total administrative expenses, SG&A, increased by about 1% from $6 billion flat to about $6.071 billion. And also other income fell off by about $160 million, and the combination of those two things resulted in an approximately $300 million or 10% fall in the operating profit, which fell from roughly $3.3 billion to $3 billion for the 9-month period. Profit before taxation, after adjustments, that fell by 15% from $2.87 billion to $2.5 billion. And then finally, the net profit attributable to shareholders for the 9-month period was $1.7 billion, a 19% fall from same period last year. And similarly, the EPS falls accordingly to 65 cents for the period compared to 80 cents previously, primarily as a result of those changes we just explained. Meantime, total assets is up by 6% to $21.8 billion, with the group having approximately $2 billion in cash, while total liabilities increased by 13% to $16.5 billion. And total shareholders' equity was down 12% to $5.35 billion. Next slide, we can do a deep dive into the revenues, which I said were relatively flat, right, for the 9-month period, going from 38.3 to 38.6 billion, so less than 1% growth. And what we can see here is a bit of a mixed basket. I'll start off with the PIN codes or the revenues from the telecom side. That's up 15% from 8.7 billion to $10 billion, so like $1.2 billion growth. That's very impressive. Meantime, sports betting fell from 12.8 to 11.4 billion dollars, and we'll definitely be discussing that with Gary. I don't know if it's Olympics or whatever. We'll get a feel for that. And then the lottery, we see where those revenues also increased from 15.7 to 16.8 billion dollars. So good growth there, despite us reading in the NDNA for the published quarterly financial results the impact of Hurricane Beryl, where we were told the impact of Beryl on lottery sales was about $1 billion, estimated to be about $1 billion. And we'll also talk about that a little bit more in the segment as we get into our Q&A with Gary Parrott. Next slide shows a sort of pie chart pictorial view of what's going on with the revenues, which we just explained. And as we said before, the biggest growth really was in sports betting. Otherwise, no major changes. And then the next slide shows the quarterly profit movement in a bar chart. And so for the quarter, we see revenues falling to 376 million, which is still a little bit better than same period last year where it was 374 million. But in general, falling from some of the better quarters where we've seen profitability in the 990 million region, closer to $1 billion. And again, this is a company that I personally expect that should be able to do $1 billion per quarter once they settle down. So we'll talk a little bit about that, my personal expectations as an analyst, and what Mr. Peart and team are doing to get them back to their winning ways, pun intended. Next slide shows movement in the stock price, which has had a high of $30 and a low of $20 over the last year, currently trading at about $22. And we'll see what happens after the results. But it's a stock that usually trades very well, trades with good volume. And again, based on our growth expectations for SVL, I think over the next 2 quarters, I would like to see the stock price getting back to $30, but we'll see what the future holds. And that, in a nutshell, really is our analysis of the quarterly results. Again, $1.7 billion quarterly profits attributable to shareholders for the 9-month period, which is down 19%, or about $400 million compared to the same period last year. So first question for me, Mr. Peart, this one's going to be very easy. What happened? Why did the profitability fall off? Could we discuss that a little bit from your perspective?
Again, good afternoon, everybody. It's in one word, burial. When you adjust the numbers for burial, the performance for the quarter is actually pretty exceptional. So, as you know, burial hit us in, I think, the first 2 weeks of July. We have approximately 2,000 points of sale across the country. And we actually still have about 5% of the distribution still down as based on what's happening in burial. And so in short, for July and August, the company basically broke even. It probably made a slight loss. And most of the profits that you're seeing, actually, dollar profits that you're seeing, actually came just from the month of September. So if you stop and think about it, you compare it to the prior period, the 3 months last year, we're able to do performance for 1 month out of the quarter this year was basically comparable to 3 months last year. The other set of numbers that you look into that shows the resilience of the business is, despite effectively losing 2 months, you will see where the top line revenues, is flat. And you take into account that you had suboptimal revenues for 2 months, July and August. So what it shows is that if we had our normal 2 months, we actually would have had a blowout quarter. But the good thing is that the network is back up. I think we have about between 94 and 95% coverage of the network. Certainly, that's from the lottery perspective. We have another company in the group where they had a lot of business in Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth. And as you're aware, especially St. Elizabeth still is not back up to full speed as yet. But we're happy that we have seen the recovery. We're happy that the betting dollar seems to be growing, and we expect a much better final quarter. The last thing I would say is that, in addition to, I speak about burial generally, but it really had different impacts on different businesses that we have. So for example, Caymanas, we had a very good 6 months for Caymanas. We were actually profitable during that first 6 months. Unfortunately, again, as is the story with Caymanas, it doesn't matter how every time you flip into profit, something has to happen. And so burial had a huge impact on Caymanas. We took the decision as a business that, we would support the industry. So we had race days to keep the horses active, even though we knew that the betting public, hadn't recovered as yet, and we didn't have the distribution in place. And it cost us. It is one of the biggest drivers of the underperformance for the quarter. But we feel that investment will come back to us in spades. We continue to push for harmony in that area as we move forward as a business.
Great. Well, thanks for that. So we look forward in earnest to the next quarter post Beryl. Good to hear that 95% of your network is back, and therefore we should have a great Q4 coming up, and we look forward to that. Let's talk about growth in general or innovation first of all. So let's talk a little bit about innovation and what you guys are doing. I think you've done some new games or made some adjustment to your Pick 5 game, for instance. So let's
Yes.
just talk a little bit about that. What's happening there?
So we've had very good success with that. We continually look on the suite of products. We have over 11 lottery products. And as I said to you before, it's a very segmented business. The people who play Pick 1 may not play Lucky 5, may not play Pick 4, So, we saw a space in the product suite that if we could, tinker with it, we'd get some benefit. And we've seen it. I mean, the changes in Lucky 5 has given a significant increase in relative revenues for that, which is great. That comes on the heels of the change that we did with Money Time, and it's in keeping with the innovation that you see in the business. That's what SVL is. There's some other things that we have in the pipeline, especially on our fintech side. We have our remittance license. I don't call it a temporary, but we're in a transition phase. You have to follow a certain process, and we look forward to getting our permanent license, which would really allow us to expand significantly in the country. So we look towards that, and I think that's where a lot of our innovation is going to come from, because we have invested significantly in proprietary technology. Our challenge now is to be able to roll it out so we can get the economies of scale from all of that investment. But, a lot of the things we want to do require regulatory approval, oversight, change, etc. And there's a process that has to be followed. It may be time consuming, but it's something that we have to follow. And as such, we are carrying a lot of what you call costs until we can, really roll these things out. So I call it hidden investments, as I say to the team, because as soon as we get the approval, the path to profitability will start, and I think we'll achieve it pretty quickly. Because we think the customers, all the pilots we have done so far, shows that the customers would benefit and really like some of the software that we've developed.
Okay, we look forward to that. So could we look forward to, for instance, a loyalty card, or can you share us a little bit more of some of what this is going to look like? So you're going to that regulatory approval, you're in the BOJ sandbox, you got some digital solutions that you're coming with. Give me a little hint as to what that's likely to look like.
Well, for the past 2 years, I keep referring to what we call the Supreme Life. And, that is our strategic platform. So we put a whole bunch of solutions on there. So what you have over, we're a remittance company, we have payments, you spoke about the phone credit, that's a big business, we have SV games. So ultimately, once all of these softwares are put in place, you just have a single point. We have actually a single sign-on with SV games, where you can go into SV games and access any of our products. The next step is to not only access our products that way, but to cut across these other benefits, So that distribution network we have for lottery right now, there's a lot of stuff that we can leverage on top of it to get more efficiency out of it. And I think that's what you're going to see from the software, pulling together a whole bunch of services to offer in a digital way, which ultimately is going to drive down significantly our OPEX, which will drive more profits to the bottom line.
Yeah, makes sense. Going back to the revenue by segment, so great to see 15% growth in the PIN codes, but we saw a 10% fall off in sports betting. Could you share a little color on what's happening with sports betting, why we saw those revenues falling by roughly $1.4 billion this 9-month period compared to the same period last year?
Well, again, it's very related. And then also it came at a time, June and July is when you have a break, for example, the English Premier League.
Okay.
So it's not that big an issue, to be fair. So when we look on the business, we still see robust growth that we can get from the business. But fundamentally, when your customer base is busy trying to recover, they don't really have much time to go for entertainment in terms of gaming, etc. But we expect to see that recover. And as I said, the entire profit for the quarter was earned in the month of September.
Yep, that's amazing.
And so it showed that all the different revenue lines are doing pretty well. And so we expect to see sports betting come roaring back, especially now that the EPL is back up and you have these other leagues that people want to bet on.
The Olympics, was it not that big a factor as it relates to sports betting? Sort of a non-factor, you would say?
It's always a non-factor, but some of the sports that are there, so once you have the Olympics, you have the break from your normal leagues. So the fan base that follows Chelsea, for example, one of the best teams in the world.
Chelsea what?
Is Chelsea football team. Yeah. Go Blues. Yeah. So the fan base that follow the different football clubs, is much bigger than the fan base for certain sports in similar sports in the Olympics. So you will see a natural attrition there. Sorry, on that little glitch. Yeah. So, you wouldn't necessarily get a massive jump there. And as I said, in any event, you had your burial scenario where people were trying to recover from that as well. But the true test is this quarter. So the prior quarter, we had the customer winning handsomely, and it was one of our weakest fourth quarters in decades. So we're cautiously optimistic that we'll go back to our usual fourth quarter performance and expect to see the revenues and profits jump significantly in that quarter.
Good day. Last question before I ask Chairman Berry if he has any questions for you. What's happening in Ghana? What's your latest update? It's been 1 year now. Congratulations on your first anniversary. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in Ghana and just share some thoughts about expansion generally overseas.
Yeah. So, one of the things I keep saying, I think we're in a positive value perspective from Ghana. We're not yet in a positive financial perspective there. But things like innovation in terms of how we distribute, almost 98% of our distribution in Ghana is digital and online. We're adapting some of those strategies here in Jamaica. We're benefiting significantly from it. We've seen a material turn in our revenues, and curiously, during that same burial period, which, it was a good signal to our strategic push. In that, if you do develop, when you develop these markets, you're in a position that if a hurricane damages your revenues here in Jamaica, you won't see, even if you have a material fall off in Jamaica, a Ghana could and would replace that. So that diversification became very apparent because some of our strategies that we use, we started to see some really good fruits bearing in the last couple of months. So we're doubling down there. It's a new market, so it's a market that's used to 6-ball lottery out of 90 balls for over 50 years. And so you're trying to change the culture of the people, you're trying to introduce something that's not really known. And so you have to seed it. So I think the first 12 months we've spent a lot of money, invested a lot of money to get people to understand the game. And there's a big difference, Dan, between managing a brand that's already established, like what you have here in Jamaica, and also managing a brand that is new and you have to get customers, etc. It's a totally different mindset and science. So we're pretty clear on that difference, and we're cautiously optimistic that we will see some very good results in the last quarter there. The trend is positive. We're materially above we're materially above now than where we were last year. And, we continue to push to get to break even and beyond.
Okay, very good. Chairman Berry, you've been relatively quiet. Surely you have a question or two for the young man.
Yes. So it's almost 7 years now since we made this investment in Supreme. And I remember when we started, the company was making about $1 billion. And of our 8 businesses, I think only one was making a profit at the time. Now we're investing for growth. And I know the investments must be costing the company in terms of we're making these investments and we're not seeing a positive cash flow. So considering my projection is that we should pass $3 billion in profits this year. And all this on the back of Burial. So from your perspective, would the company be better off, if we just decide to milk the cow and don't invest in these growth opportunities? Or how do you see the whole thing when you consider where we are now in profitability compared to where we were and all this money we're investing in hoping for an opportunity for growth, but not yet seeing one? Give me your perspective on that.
Thanks. So I'll handle the first part. It was about 900 and something million. So yes, we came in at a high point. We tripled that. We made $3 billion, I think, year before last. And so it showed that we have materially moved the value and the profits of the business over the 7 years. How we're able to do that is because of our outlook and understanding of the business and also the international environment. So that's the mindset we came in. And that mindset was what was used to turn around most of the loss-making businesses in the company at the time. So sports betting wasn't making enough money. Caymanas was losing a significant amount of money and so on. So that mindset is what also drove us to invest outside of Jamaica. And of course, there's always just, if you try to second guess yourself, if you hadn't done that, what would have happened here? Yes, your profits would probably trend in a bit above $3 billion. But then Beryl reminds you why the strategy is what it is, because a series of Beryls, remember Beryl was like the first hurricane or the second hurricane of the season. And the concern was, maybe we're going to get hit by a second one. So if you see that if you get a period of a hurricane every year and it hits 2 months of your revenues, you're not going to materially grow. And so whilst you're making these investments, and that's the key word, investments. A part of it is learning, a part of it is understanding the business, but also a part of it is to deal with the regulatory requirement processes, etc. Because, as an example, what we've learned in Ghana, we know for sure will work here, but you have to follow your regulatory approval process, etc. And whilst you're doing that, you're burning cash. You cannot not hire the people and have them ready for when you get the release. So you will find that as these things come to profit and when they come to profit, their credit, their addition to the profits will make the profits, jump exponentially. So, we use Ghana as an example, based on the trend that, we're seeing now that we expected, we have now acquired more customers in Ghana than what we have here in Jamaica. They just don't play as consistently as they play here in Jamaica as yet. But we have seen the signs that if and when we get there, the profit generation of that business is going to dwarf materially what we have here in Jamaica, right? And so I think that process makes sense. So across the group, we're flipping other business into profit. I mean, so our microfinance businesses are profitable, relatively small profits, but profitable nonetheless. I mean, when we acquired them, they were losing money. And we see signs that, most of the other businesses that we have are going to flip into profit. And more importantly, as they flip into profit, they're going to flip into profit in spades. And so, to close the answer, Chris, when I look on the business right now, which is what the management is focusing on, if we have a year where we don't record losses in any of the subsidiaries, $4 to $5 billion in profit is pretty simple. Yeah. And that's what we're pushing for in relatively short order. We think where we are, for example, with our fintech business, we have been working very closely with the central bank, and the wonderful people there, Natalie Haynes, Stanton, etc. And we're coming up to speed very quickly. So once we get that approval, that's a business that on the margin becomes immediately profitable. It also acquires new customers that can come into our gaming business as well. And so that immediately just drives a certain level of revenue and profits that will just go straight to the bottom line. We'll discuss Ghana. You also have the racetrack. I've always said it. When we first came to SVL, I would have taken any opportunity to have given back Caymanas track. Now, when we fully understand what Caymanas track is and what can happen with Caymanas, not just on the horse racing side, but for example, on the entertainment side, first of all, we don't even have enough land out there to do what we would want to do. And that is a business that, interestingly, if we get the opportunity from the government of Jamaica to do what we want to do, that's a business that could throw off some ridiculous amount of profits, especially on the entertainment side. So we're just using all our different relationships, our different resources, etc., to reduce these losses in these subsidiaries and turn to drive profit. And I close by saying, a business like, Caymanas, people don't truly understand what the potential of a Caymanas is and how easy it is to turn it around, but at the same time, how easy it is to push it back, to where it has come. We had an incident on Monday, where, some stewards made a bad decision. That decision was reversed today. But unfortunately, the result of that bad decision created an abandonment of 7 races. So just from that alone, we've lost in excess of $30 billion, just like that, because the margins are that thin. But that's the least of it. I mean, you spend the rest of the time talking to potential sponsors who are seeing this being beamed across the world. And as I said to somebody, we, for the first time, Caymanas was in 2 publications that have never been in before. And it was because of this negativity, So why, after we've worked 7 years to bring it to this level, a decision, where 3 junior stewards are left to adjudicate. I mean, it shouldn't happen, But Solomon Sharp and Chairman Sharp over at Caymanas, I'm so proud of him. He's put out a very, very good statement here about the changes that needs to happen, and he's calling for the Ministry of Finance, to get involved in training the stewards, etc. And ultimately, we probably will get to a point where we as a promoter need to have our stewards on the panel as well to ensure that the quality of decisions stay at a certain level. Because at the end of the day, Chris, we're a global company and we have global standards. And we need to make sure that the stakeholders that we interact with also try to achieve those global standards. So in short, I think we have the right strategy. But the team needs to find a different way to execute to eliminate those losses. And I think for 2025, we will go a far way in not having those losses going forward.
Okay, Thanks for that, Gary. Well, at this point in time, I want to start taking a few questions from online. I've got a few that's piled up, and then, of course, we'll come back and allow Chairman Baird to ask one or two more questions. Okay, first one I want to tackle a few questions coming in from Philip Burgess. Has the position of CEO for iBet in Ghana being filled? And also, could you tell us a little bit about Game Park, their competitiveness in Ghana, like what percentage of the market they control, etc.?
So permanent posting has not yet been finalized, but we have an acting CEO in Jesus Johnston. So Jesus is the CEO of Prime Sports, and he's overseeing what is happening in Ghana. We are looking at our organizational structure, and so it's very likely we will be announcing what would be a country manager. So we have pretensions to go into other countries in the world. And so we're looking at a structure where we have country managers in each of these jurisdictions. So Jesus asked for now, I think in relatively short order, we'll announce a country manager for Ghana. In terms of competitiveness, unlike Jamaica, where the regulator puts out numbers so you can empirically determine where you are, that's not the case in Ghana. So I can't give you an empirical answer based on empirical fact.
Mm-hmm.
What I can say to you is based on market intelligence, I think where we are now in terms of the revenues that we're generating now, we would have, I would say, a material percentage of the existing market. So if I were to guess, I would say we have somewhere between 5 to 10% of the market. But in terms of the potential of the market, I don't think we have scratched the surface of the potential of the market. So we base anecdotally, the number one player has been in business for 50 odd years. And what we're seeing over the last 2 months, actually the last 3 weeks, some of the revenues that we are generating has surpassed on certain days the revenues of this incumbent. So whatever it is here now, as we continue down this trend, we expect it to get bigger. And there will come a point, and I think in the relatively near future, where when that becomes cash flow positive, it's when it becomes, for a better word, hugely cash flow positive.
Good deal. Thanks for that. And another question also about Ghana is how does SVL earn its revenues from the contract with Game Park? Is it a specific percentage of the gaming revenue versus some other method?
So similar to our lottery provider here, or lottery partner here, or the technology partner here, sorry. We charge a fee, and based on revenues, etc., we'll earn from that fee. So as Game Park revenues grow, I bet Ghana's revenue will grow along with it.
Okay, very good. I think that's pretty clear. Question coming in from Limitless Podcast is, would SVL consider a share buyback program?
At this point, no. But SVL has a trust for its employees. So SVL rewards its senior executives with shares at the end of each year once they've hit their targets. So our trust account buys shares from time to time. And, the people who manage those purchases, are pretty comfortable and understand when is ideally the best time to buy shares, to take advantage of some of the lower share prices. So you might not necessarily see a formal buyback, but there's a vehicle that consistently has to be buying shares because we have contracts with our executives that we have to fulfill, especially as they achieve their bonus targets.
Very good. And that's the treasury shares that we typically see in the balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good deal. Thank you, Tevon. Tevon says SVL is a must-have. Jamaicans love gambling. Another question coming in from Philip Burgess. Well, Philip, you're on it today. Any updates on the concert bond idea that Gary had and spoke of in relation to a main event or SVL joint venture?
Well, there was a launch of the Boys to Men concert, and I had spoken to that as well, which was after I'd mentioned it here in our last update. So the concept is it's no longer a concept. Dan and his team have all the details certainly around what we refer to as a concert bomb. And so, we did this pilot, or we're in the middle of this pilot with Boys to Men. And I think once this concert has closed and we look on certain details, etc., for the next concert, it's very likely that we will launch it then, and which would give people the opportunity to participate. In short, one of the things, one of the implicit mantras of Mayberry is that we want every Jamaican to become rich, eh? And so you have these different industries that people want to participate in but don't understand the nuances. And, we think with things like the concert bond, you can start to democratize the entertainment industry. But said differently, as you know, Dan, we are fundamentally risk managers. And when we look on the risk that is placed upon a promoter, it is relatively high. So a concert bond is a way for promoters to, pass off some of the risk. And ultimately also from in terms of democratizing the industry, will be a point where in addition to the concert bond, which is a debt type structure, you'll also have equity raises where you can be part of the equity of a concert. So what you want to do is it will be put out there for the average person where you can participate. Let's use Boys to Men, for example. You'd be able to participate in the equity if you think if you can stomach that risk. But then the next level down is your concert bond where you earn interest on the debt and a potential piece of the profits as well. And, so if you get a big enough star, what it does, it puts people now in a position where promoters can go after the most attractive stars out there and would no longer be humbled by lack of capital, because you're now spreading the risk and the ability to raise capital across a wider set of people.
Good. I think that's pretty clear. Chairman Berry, any additional questions from you?
No, I don't have a question right now, but I have a correction for the Chairman Peart. So the answer to Burgess' question was actually that we didn't launch the bond, but we had a private placement, which is the first run. And based on how things go, it will be opened up to a wider grouping the next time.
Okay, very good. Well,
I will accept that correction.
Oh, I have another question for Mr. Peart. The rage these days is online. Can you give us an update on your online offerings and how competitive it is with what's happening elsewhere?
On the balance, I think SVL is probably one of the biggest online businesses in the country, if not the region. And it's proven to be quite efficient because we keep seeing month over month increase in customers. Again, we look at different ways to acquire customers. I gave the example a couple investor briefings ago where one of the Super Lotto winners actually placed their bet on the SV Gaming app. And, it reduces materially the cost of providing that service. And so if you stop and think about it, our business is about margins. So every 1%, the average size of the lottery business is about 350 to 400 million US. So every 1% that you can save is going to give you an additional $3.5 to $4 million US dollars. At 150, that's $600 million. It's quite material. And so when we look at the cost of what I refer to as our terrestrial distribution, that cost, give or take, will be somewhere around 8-9%, which is agents' commission plus IGT's fees, etc. And when you compare that to our online delivery, the cost for your online delivery is probably closer to 1 or 0.5% in terms of how you amortize the software. So, you never have it, but if you're able to migrate all the business online, you're talking about an 8-point saving on a 400 million lottery. That's what 8 4 is 32. That's quite a bit of money. So it's a part of the strategic initiative. And so what we're doing is we continue to acquire those customers. And the intention, again, as we get our approvals and get into the sandbox and start to roll out some of those other proprietary software, that same philosophy will occur, where you're basically replacing terrestrial businesses with digital businesses that have a significantly or materially lower cost point.
Good deal. Thanks for that. So Philip asks, is SVL considering implementing an online casino? And Jerome follows up with, is there any involvement with the hotel or the casinos to come in Jamaica?
Philip, I think you said, Philip, we already have rolled that out. We already have iCasino. We call it Acropolis Online. And so you can go to SV Gaming and access that. And we have different casino type offerings across at least 2 brands. So Post to Post has an online solution, and Supreme Ventures Gaming also has an online solution that is Acropolis Online.
Okay, and what types of games can you find there, like roulette or poker?
Yeah, the usual stuff. Most of the games in Acropolis you can find it on there.
Okay, very good. So that answers Jerome and Philip's question. So Chairman Barry, unless you have any additional questions, I think we're going to wrap this up. We do appreciate the insights, Gary, that you provided in relation to SVL and its quarter's performance and year to date, and we definitely look forward to the next quarter.
Thank you, Dan.
Good deal. And once again, I do want to apologize to our viewers for our late start today, which was due to some technical challenges beyond our control. We definitely pride ourselves on wanting to be prompt and on time. And with that, we'd like to move over into our next segment. So thanks, everybody, for today's discussion. Viewers, as usual, for tuning in. We always appreciate your support. Big thanks to Chris, Chairman Barry, and Gary Peard for making it an exciting discussion and for the insights which you guys provided. To our viewers, your support's always appreciated. Be sure to stick around to our YouTube channel as we move over next into covering MGL's Q3 quarterly results. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mayberry Investments Limited. Remember, wise investors to keep safe, and slow and steady wins the race. We'll be right back at you.
The Mayberry Virtual Investor Forum, Investing in Jamaica.